What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to another Pay-Per-Viewpoint edition of the Smark Out Moment Smack Talk podcast, as well as the 617th episode of the Hot Tags here. We're going to combine everything for this week because I am not going to be able to record tomorrow where we would do the Hot Tags, and we talked about some of these Hot Tags already on the Darkcast, so we kind of whittled away about half of what we were talking about before. Check back that Darkcast if you didn't already. But we will get into that stuff. We will be getting into the WrestleDream predictions side of things, obviously before the pay-per-views hit us on Saturday and Sunday, where we'll do the post shows. I'm your host, as always, Tony Mango. Joining me, as always, are Robert A. Felice.
Hello.
And Callum Wiggins.
You dreamboats.
Aw, I like that. Of course, as we always do here, we want to remind you to let us know what you want to talk about with all these things that we're going to be talking about here. So drop your thoughts in the comments below for the WrestleDream stuff and the hot tags. And while you're over there on YouTube, make sure that you are hitting the subscribe button if you are not already subscribed. Ring that little notification bell to get those email alerts for those post shows coming up on Saturday and Sunday. Hit the little thanks button if you want to toss a little spare change our way. If you want to take part of the Darkcast here, like I mentioned before, then sign up through the YouTube channel membership or the Patreon. You get access to the same exact things over there. Thank you to XOY for just joining that tier the other day. I think it was yesterday or so. Redbubble and TeePublic are where you can get the merchandise options. And, pretty much the normal plugs that we do here all the time. If you don't know what they are, let me know. I'll fill you in on more information on that. But we don't want to get bogged down too much because we got a lot to talk about here. We got, I think it's 10 matches on WrestleDream. And then, obviously, as I mentioned before, a couple things on the hot tag side of it. Let's get the WrestleDream stuff out there. I mean, this is predominantly the main event of this kind of podcast. And, main event sometimes goes last, sometimes goes first, sometimes it's half the card, according to WWE. But as far as WrestleDream, as what I'm aware of, I got to double check right now just to see if anything changed in the past 12 hours or so, because you never know. But I don't think that they have announced anything as being a part of the pre-show yet. It's all just the 10 matches, and maybe one or two of them are going to be moved to the pre-show, where they're just going to add more. I don't know. You guys think that they're going to add more to it? Or do you think that they're going to take the TBS title match or something and put that on the pre-show?
I doubt they'll put the TBS match because that's the only women's match on the card. So I doubt they'll move that one to the 0 hour. The likelihood is they'll add to it. They've still got Rampage and Collision to go before this show, so there's every opportunity they'll add one or two to the pre-show.
Man, Saraya with those title defenses, right? Or for that matter, multiple other championships in these past couple of pay-per-views. They're on a stretch now where it's like, well, no, we're going to focus on tag titles and not have champions and stuff. Yeah. As far as matches that they might add to there, is there anything you guys think is standing out?
They've already announced, obviously next week for Dynamite, there's going to be a match for the International Championship, so probably not that. We kind of know, based on what happened to Dynamite, who MJF's likely next challenger is, so we probably won't get that until Full Gear. And right now there's nothing that really stands out as it will be one of those kickoff shows where it's like, oh, wouldn't it be fun to just throw this match together? I don't think there's anything that's real got a lot of storyline behind it that's would find itself onto the kickoff show.
So a typical pre-show for AEW.
There should be another women's match added. I don't, top of my head, no. Maybe Cheetah and Baker. Maybe throw that on the pre-show.
Anything
Hook
ROH wise, like Athena,
Athena could have a defense on it, depending on what they decide to do. There's a few, there's already a couple of Ring of Honor title matches on this, so just throwing Athena on the kickoff show to beat up some randomer would be fine. I can't really think.
Emmy or something.
Maybe something involving the rest of Bullet Club Gold, or the fact that Bullet Club Gold doesn't have a presence at all on this card. Maybe they'll find something for them to do. Maybe an 8-man tag or a 6-man tag or something.
We got two members.
Guns are on it. The Guns are on it. Yeah. Oh yeah, maybe maybe like just a match for. I don't think you want to put Jay White
Juice
on it.
against
put Juice in a match something.
Rush or Preston Dance or something.
You put him against like I'm trying to think of who else would be a good choice for it. Maybe I'm trying to think of someone that would make logical sense for Juice to face, but yeah, nothing's really coming up to mind right now because you're not going to do like I don't know, Juice Robinson versus Jeff Jarrett on the 0 hour. So
yeah, I mean there are still plenty names that are missing from this card that realistically you should try to put on a pay-per-view. I mean we don't have Samoa Joe, we don't have you just mentioned somebody's name that just popped in my mind. Like Jay White and all them. We don't have obviously Baker. We don't have Shida. We don't have any the ROH championships outside of the Eddie Kingston element of that. I mean that Shibata's on the card, but yeah, he's not defending his title separately. But lots of other people that could make an appearance in some fashion.
I think it's fine to, as I say, like we've always spoken about how like big and potentially bloated the AEW roster is. So you're not going to get everyone on every pay-per-view.
Yeah.
So
it's a shame though that it's not like necessarily a follow up with Miro or with.
No one knows what's happening with Miro at this point.
Right there is the Miro CJ stuff. They could easily throw something like that. Maybe CJ Perry reveals her newest client. Even if that's just a segment, that's something. And
it's Jack Perry, and now they're siblings.
To be honest, that wouldn't actually be a bad idea.
Actually, the pairing wouldn't be bad. The siblings, yes.
The siblings bad, yes, but the but the idea in principle, pretty good. Jack Perry needs a mouthpiece, so.
So at least as far as right now, Thursday afternoon, it's just these 10 matches. Obviously, if they do announce anything, then we're not going to have another podcast in the meantime, but there will be changes on smarkoutmoment.com to reflect that. And of course, we'll talk about, the fact that they added these when we do the post show and all that. But the 10 matches that we have currently scheduled, let's start off with the one that they just added on Dynamite. Ricky Starks versus Wheeler Yuta. It's hard for me to get into this, but it's also one of those things that you're going to hear from me a lot of the time with AEW. And I mean, here and there when it comes to WWE too, where it's basically just, I like both the guys. They're going to do a good job, but there's nothing for me to sink my teeth into. And Ricky Starks is probably going to win, I would assume, because you can build more towards, it'll be a bigger area to have like Ricky Starks versus Claudio in the future rather than this all ends with Wheeler in my mind.
It's going to be just that. Go ahead, Cal.
Oh, I think it's just like, Ricky's been involved with a lot of people in the Blackpool Combat Club in the last month or so. So this is just an opportunity to him to go up against I don't want to say the job guy of that group, but the least experienced and the least protected member of that group, so he can probably pick up a victory. But I think this is going to be a great match. Like they're like, it's short notice, but their promo segment on Dynamite really got me interested in seeing how this goes.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to have a phenomenal match. I think this is great for Yuta. This is the first major one-on-one encounter for Yuta quite some time on a pay-per-view, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he does. I'm looking forward to seeing how this advances, where Ricky ends up. I'm looking forward to kind of the fallout from this as well, because they're telling a clear story of Yuta is abused by the Blackpool Combat Club, and at some point he's going to need to stand up to them.
I mean, he flat out said something like, they beat me up all the time or whatever.
I mean, they've been showing him getting beat up, and now he's like, I get up. They beat me up all the time, and I get up. So they know what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me to have that going into it and have you to get the win. Because then what, So it seems like it's just a Ricky Starks win, but they're not going to have a bad match. And, a lot of the AEW events are pretty much built on, do you want to see those guys fight each other. And relatively speaking, even though it doesn't have a major hook for it, and no, not just talking about hook, yeah, they'll have a good segment. I can't say I'm as interested in the blatant just, well, I'm going to enjoy the match as much as I'm sure that you guys are going to be when it comes to this, but the FTR versus Aussie Open World Tag Team Championship match is something that I'm like, I don't dislike Aussie Open, but I don't see anything from them that makes them stand out to me over, we got like 200 plus people on the AEW and WWE roster. And I'm like, yeah, about maybe 5/6 of those roster people are about on par with them to me. They're just guys. So to me, this is one of those things where it's like, I'm going to mentally check out of this match unless they start doing some moves pretty early on that really catch my attention. If it ends up being a 15-minute match where it takes 8 minutes to heat up, you're going to end up hearing me on the podcast being like, yeah, I had nothing to say about this. FTR is going to retain.
The funny thing to me is that this match is specifically for you. This match is for the people who think Aussie Open hasn't done shit since they got there. And they said as much on their promo on last week's Collision, and I know you're not watching as intently, and they flat out said, or FTR flat out said, you were sacrificed to Adam Cole and his best friend. You were sacrificed to Jericho and his best friend. I'm begging you, bring the Aussie Open that we fought last year in New Japan, and let's tear the house down. So
I really hope that they do. That.
And Callum, you were in the building for the last time these guys fought. Looking forward to it?
Yeah, I have, as someone who does follow New Japan more closely and has followed Aussie Open's year, they're comfortably one of, if not like definitely top 5 tag team in the world. In terms of just like pure in-ring side of things, like they were having absolute banger matches in New Japan prior to Mark Davis getting injured and them having to relinquish both the IWGP and New Japan Strong Tag Team Championships. Obviously, they won the Ring of Honor tag titles and just like that fun, like 4 or 5 way tag team match. And yeah, as I say, I was live watching FTR versus Aussie Open at Royal Quest last year, and yeah, it's comfortably one of the best matches I've ever seen live. And I have no reason to suspect that the second round of it will be will not be a level below that. I think that there are at least people, and I think Tony is right in saying that we haven't seen a lot of Aussie Open so far, and so they haven't been able to demonstrate why they are one of the best tag teams around right now. Hopefully this is the match that really shines the spotlight on that and gives them the credibility and recognition from people that they've gathered basically everywhere else they've gone in their careers. So yeah, that's the hope, and I think this is a perfect match for them to do so. And it's also pretty unpredictable. I'm just not really sold on who's actually going to win this one.
I think FTR is winning because I think they're going to continue their open challenges. But I will say, FTR is also kind of in a place where they're a bit in limbo as well. That's funny to say, as they're the champions. But they were kind of hitched to Punk, and who really knows how much of their creative has been restructured following the departure of CM Punk. So it's definitely an interesting match, but I think everybody can get on the right track after this, regardless of who wins. But I'm going to go gun to my head, probably poor phrasing, FTR.
I'll see what Cash has to say about that. No, this is definitely an opportunity where they're going to have to sell me on how they're not on the same exact level as, like, say, Cruz del Toro and Joaquin Wilde. And that sounds like
you need to calm down a little bit, pal.
That's it. To me, that sounds like it's like diminishing, but at the same time, it's kind of like we're spoiled for people that are good at wrestling right now. And, if you look at like, I don't know, say like baseball, like, you know, people in the past who would be like, oh, Babe Ruth is like the best. And it's like, yeah, you probably put Babe Ruth on a team right now. I don't know, he probably sucks compared to most of the people. And you take old classic wrestlers that are like, wow, man, they did an arm drag. How fucking crazy is that? And then you look at most of the people that are wrestling right now. And if you were to take somebody who's on the lower end in pro wrestling at this moment, like on the WWE and AEW rosters, and you put them in even, you know, the 80s, and it would be like, oh my God, if they're doing the stuff that they're doing, that's insane. They're going to be the biggest thing in the world. So if we've got tons and tons and tons of talented in-ring people, you need to be extra talented or extra interesting, or you have to have like some kind of a little gimmick or something to kind of catch my attention. And if you don't, then that's not to say that you're bad, but bland in the face of greatness can come off as bad to a lot of people. And that's why I always say, like, I'm not in the extremes of like, oh, this is going to be the worst thing. No, that's going to be a good match, but I'm not going to probably remember it by the end of the match almost, because then it's going to be another good match, and then another good match, and then another one, and then, you know what I mean? So I want them to show something here that makes me go, oh, okay, I get it now. Hopefully they do. I will say I'm disappointed, though, if we're talking tag team title matches here, that again, we're not getting MJF defending the world championship, because they decided to do the Samoa Joe thing prior to this on television on a Grand Slam. They set up this Jay White thing, and I'm like, first off, I don't care about the Righteous. They have to show something to me, too, at this point. I'm not watching Ring of Honor, so maybe there's some great stuff on there. But then again, you know, the real estate that you have as far as watching stuff, you got to try to make everything count. And every show, what's the phrase? Every show is somebody's first show. All it takes is for somebody to go, oh man, I really saw that one good match and that person caught my attention or whatever. I haven't seen anything from the Righteous that have really made me wowed yet. So I'm already down on it to just be the fact that it's the Righteous. I'm already down on it, the fact that MJF and Adam Cole were supposed to be defending these titles and not MJF doing something more important. And then now MJF is doing it by himself. It's a handicap match. And Adam Cole's injured because he's just completely snake bit in AEW. Every time this guy starts getting on a roll, he gets injured or something happens. And also, it's not their fault, but it's like, even if MJF were to have a surprise extra partner, we're already getting that story right now going on with John Cena and Fastlane and all. So it's like back to back, the whole like handicap, but then somebody else comes in and whatever. Obviously, they would technically be able to pull the trigger on that quicker than Fastlane because it is a couple days prior to that. But I'm just not sold on this at all. As much as I love MJF, I don't care that he's going to defend the ROH tag titles in a handicap match against the Righteous. Just move on. MJF retains. Or if you want to tell the story of he lost because it's a handicap match, then I'm curious what happens afterward, but not during the match. You know what I mean?
Well, MJF's, I mean, I grant you what you're saying about this particular match, but coming out of last night, MJF and the story surrounding him is the most talked about thing in wrestling right now because of the, I guess if you want to call it a post-credits scene on last night's Dynamite with the 5 men attacking Jay White with the guy in the devil mask. I'm hoping we get some advancement of that here. The Righteous as characters are great. I understand why you say that you haven't seen stuff from them, but I like them as characters. I hope that they're presented well here. I do think they have to lose, even though it's 2-on-1, because I think those Ring of Honor tag titles just belong to the Kingdom. But we'll see. Ultimately, I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, MJF has got a lot on his plate right now, and I think it's part of the overarching story that his friendship with Adam Cole has led to MJF wrestling more often, and he is a double champion, and so they've decided to go with the Ring of Honor tag titles here. I think that's fine. I think there's more than enough high quality matches on this show that you don't need to put the World Championship on it as well. I think that, I mean, it's obviously disappointing what's happened to Adam Cole, and there's probably a lot of plans that were in place that have now had to be torn up or rethought and reconfigured as a result of it. I don't think you have Jay White pushed up to the world title picture immediately if what happens to Adam Cole doesn't happen to Adam Cole. So, but it will be interesting to see how they decide to approach this match with those configurations in mind, because obviously they could give the titles to the righteous. And I pretty much said on the Dark Cast pretty much that I don't like situations where just main event guys beat an established tag team. But MJF and Cole had demonstrated a good ability as a tag team, so that would have been fine for them to defend it. So even though MJF is the world champion, but that's where you also get into the issue of, do you really want Dutch to pin your world champion? That's a little...
I completely agree with that.
So it's a difficult situation. What I could imagine happening is, because of what happened at the end of Dynamite with the masked guys, even though the last guy seemed to have quite the frame of someone with not very broad shoulders. So I was almost suspecting it's a woman under the mask instead.
It could be a woman.
Yeah.
A woman.
But so I can imagine what happening, because if the aim of it is they're trying to frame MJF, or the MJF has got a crew behind him now, I could see some people with the masks come down and like help MJF and screw the righteous so MJF can get the unlikely victory. And then he knows nothing about it, because I presume that's the story, is they're framing him for all this stuff. So,
what do you think's under the mask, Callum?
Right now I think it's Adam Cole.
I also think it's Adam Cole. I've seen some people say it's Baker.
One of them's clearly Roddy, because
he's got a fucking neck brace on. Still.
Yeah. I mean, you saw the neck brace through the ski mask, so like,
which is amazing. I think that's tremendous.
I think at the moment it's, well, the speculation, I think the most credible one is the 5 people were Adam Cole, Roderick Strong, the Kingdom, and Kyle O'Reilly.
I think that's the way to go.
That's the thing that seems to stand out the most to me.
Yeah.
But then again, that might be the whole point, is for you to be looking at that, and then it's like, surprise, it's actually, I don't know.
LFI.
It's Stu Grayson,
because they've been feuding, because Bullet Club Gold have been feuding with Andrade.
Yeah, but you can't be that
Collision.
Like, I don't want to say dense, but like, you can't be. It's clearly they're framing MJF. I can see the only other person maybe being Baker. I would love for Baker to get into the mix of things. I think
it could be the setup for Edge to come in.
Could be the setup for Edge to come in. I don't know
with his own retribution.
Yeah,
it could also. I was going to say it could also be that they don't necessarily have the means to get somebody on television right now, so they're going with a masked thing, and then it's like, surprise, surprise, it's Ziggler or somebody, where that's their means to kind of tease that with somebody.
For 90 days.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, they've been stretching out a lot of things for as long as they have.
Ziggler could always opt out of the 90 days. Anybody has the option of opting out of the 90 days. It's just that they would be foolish to pass up 90 days pay.
Free money and being at home with their families instead. But it just I wouldn't be shocked if they tried to stretch it out for a while, but stretch it out for 3 months feels like a bit, like, just for this masked angle. I think that's a bit too much. I think you can probably get this past Full Gear if you are going to go with the Jay White and MJF match eventually, but I think that after that you kind of need to give us at least a taste of who is potentially in it. Maybe not even the guy in the main mask, but some of the other people. But I don't know, we'll see how it goes. I would say probably a lot of a spanner's been thrown into their plans, so it's important to see how they react. But in this circumstance, I'm going to go with MJF getting the victory through some shenanigans.
If this was WWE, it would be like, somehow it's Jay White under the mask, and you'd be like, that gets impossible. And I'd be like, yeah, it doesn't matter. Fuck you. You shouldn't remember 2 weeks ago. Like,
it's his doppelganger, like Eric Rowan.
Yeah.
So it really could. I like that they attacked Jay White, because Jay White took credit for taking Adam Cole out to begin with. So it makes sense that they would want that vengeance. Not, even though I totally think it's just 100% Cole, I would be all for the idea of it actually being Baker, who there's so much there. Remember all that CM Punk talk where it was like, you didn't even realize you've been replaced as a pillar by Britt Baker. You can always fall back to that. And I'm actually, I think it was a great way to close the show, and they got a lot of people talking.
At what point, without having Saraya defending the championship on back-to-back pay-per-views and MJF having this ROH tag title thing, and then of course you look on the other side of pro wrestling and you've got Roman Reigns, who's been like, hey, I popped up like 6 times this entire year and didn't defend my title more than, a handful of times and all. At what point do you guys reach where you go, God damn it, we need to have the main champions on these pay-per-views? I know that obviously if you're getting enough other stuff that justifies it, and in WWE's case, they're trying to be like, well, you're getting Seth Rollins defending a world title, so that counts, right, guys? But how many even pay-per-views have we seen where it's like Rhea Ripley wasn't defending that championship, or Io wasn't, or we're really in an era right now where they're just like, we got all these world titles. We technically have five world titles if you don't count NXT in WWE. And then we've got, I guess technically you can count the ROH world title and the AEW world title and the women's world title. And then the the ROH women's world title. Like, we got like 10 quote unquote world titles going on right now in these two companies. And typically speaking, we're going many pay-per-views now where it's like, oh, maybe one of them is being defended over the course of this month or something.
Well, Max I'm not as worried about, because Max defended in August at All Out, or is it All In? He defended at All In London, and he defended at Grand Slam. So he's kind of covered.
But is it okay in your mind to do like the 30-day thing that's a completely arbitrary rule, and then to say like, but as long as we're getting the matches on TV, I don't care about the pay-per-view, because pay-per-view you have to buy.
At least he's on the pay-per-view. Like, when you're comparing it to Roman, I'm going to say at least he's there.
Right.
But I do understand what you're saying. But go ahead, Kel.
It's one of those things that I'm never going to complain if they're giving me a title match for free on TV. So if they're giving me a big match on TV, then I'm going to go for it. And I think at this point, and I know it won't apply to everyone, I understand, but just from my perspective, I think that AEW has built up such a strong reputation for putting on excellent pay-per-views that you just sell it on the AEW name now. I don't think you necessarily, as long as MJF is on the show, he doesn't have to be defending the world title. People are there to see MJF. They don't care if he's defending his title or not.
They do run a risk. They run the risk of getting too comfortable with that, but I do think that right now they can play around with that a little bit.
I'm gonna probably revisit this as like maybe a recurring thing with, I mean, not necessarily with Fastlane, because it's just next week and we just talked about it, but like I think when we get to Crown Jewel, I think will be the next pay-per-view after that, or is that Full Gear before that? No, I think it's Crown Jewel, then Full Gear, then I'm going to try to maybe revisit this for the next couple pay-per-views and just be like, what's your level at now? That kind of thing. Because
I think it's also like when it gets to the point that they're likely going to be doing either 12 pay-per-views a year or 10 pay-per-views or whatever, I'd actually find it probably more refreshing that they wouldn't always have the world title as the main event on those shows. And also, if it becomes part of Max, and so you're only paying a monthly subscription for it, then the payment issue falls away a bit as well. So
again, you run the risk of getting too comfortable with that, but I do think that there are ways of doing it that can be better.
I think as long as you offer something that is of good value alongside it, like say, like you don't put a world title match on there, but you've got a blood and guts match as the main event of the show, or a big stadium stampede or something like that. Obviously, it doesn't have so much on this show, but I think they've built it around a number of like strong singles matches that are kind of, not on their own don't seem like blockbuster, but combined together feel like pretty strong.
basically the idea in mind of like if Survivor Series comes around and you've got War Games, that's fine if Roman's not there. But then I do think that we're well past the point of being like, okay, crap. But if he's not at the pay-per-view before that and the pay-per-view after that, crap. Like,
Roman's
come on, man.
Completely different. Roman's a completely different situation. I mean, you can say about what MJF is on TV every week.
Yeah.
So Roman is a completely different kettle of fish. Like, that is a guy who only appears like twice a month and likely won't defend his title. Is that only defends his title once every like 3 to 6 months. So I think we can't really lump AEW into the same boat in that with their world champions. At least they both defended it a couple of weeks ago.
I would like to see though, like Saraya is also. This is the second pay-per-view that she's not on there, and yeah, she had the TV match, and it's but it's like. You got to do matches on TV to get the ratings, and I understand that, and that I agree with the idea of like who's going to be upset if they have a world title match on there, as long as it's a good world title match and all. You're not going to be like, why are you doing that on Dynamite? But like,
well, if we kind of finished talking about MJF versus the Righteous, I think we're all going MJF, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's probably a good opportunity. I know there's still enough. It seems like we talk about both the AEW World Tag Titles and the Ring of Honor one, and we haven't even moved on to the Fatal 4-Way Tag Team match about the other stuff. But actually, I thought that what we're discussing right now with Saraya is a good transition into Statlander versus Julia Hart.
Yeah, we might as well. We can come back to the tag title match.
Yeah,
or
because
the tag number one contenders. I mean,
okay, so we know the score about AEW when it comes to women's wrestling. We don't need to kid ourselves anymore. It's one match per show. And it's pretty much the same on this one as well. So, but they have, to their credit, and I don't give them much credit when it comes to their women's division, but they have decided to spend the last week really building Julia Hart up for this match against Kris Statlander. They've given her wins over Sky Blue, Willow Nightingale, and who was the other one on Collision? Kiera Hogan. So, like, Kiera Hogan is obviously a bit like lower down, but it's two other women that have had like multiple championship opportunities and big matches. And Willow Nightingale won the. I know she didn't win it, but she was.
She beat.
Did she win the Owen Hart?
Yeah, right.
She did win the Owen Hart, didn't she? Yeah. So it's prominent people who have gone on winning streaks beforehand. And now they're giving Julia Hart the go, and she's beaten all of them fairly cleanly for the most part. And so I can't really discredit them for not just saying, oh, it's just going to be Kris Statlander versus Julia Hart going cold. They'd said, no, this is a dangerous threat. She's beaten all these people, and now she's going after Kris Statlander. So yeah, they haven't clearly concentrated on their World Championship, but they have put a focus on the TBS Championship in the build-up to this show. So that's good. That's good at the very least. It's somewhat progress. It's not enough, but it's somewhat progress.
Yeah, they've done what they, at the very bare minimum, what they should do, which is establish that the challenger is beating other people who could be in the range of being a challenger. So that way you understand that she's in that position above the other ones because she's beaten them. It's kind of textbook, like you're just sort of
that's what should be happening all the time, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
So it's almost like it's like refreshing when it does happen, even though this should be the norm, really.
Yeah, we shouldn't pat them on the back too much to be like, oh, they're doing something great. It's like, yeah, you're doing what you should be doing, but at least they are, because they haven't in the past. So Julia Hart looks stronger now heading into this match than she did 2.5 weeks ago.
I also want to throw this out there because this is part of it. Tony Khan is very locked into statistics and random facts. Just a guy you should be when you're managing a company, in fair, point. But
that's kind of his thing with all these multiple companies. It seems like he's very much like a man, give me those spreadsheets, I fucking love it type of guy.
Yeah, I mean, like, part of the build to this is literally, well, the last person to defeat Julia was Statlander, and since then she's gone undefeated 26 times. That's part of the build, and I do think that they deserve credit. Do I think that it erases some of the issues? No, and I think that it's time Tony be confronted on those issues a little more harshly, but I do like the build to this. I do like that with Jade Cargill completely removed from the picture and the company, the TBS title can now take on a completely new identity. I think Kris is doing a great job. I think Julie will have a great first pay-per-view title shot. But ultimately, I think Kris wins.
What do you think that new identity is then?
I think they can start making it like Orange Cassidy made the international title, where it's like, I want to say the working man or the working woman's title, but you know, it's something more of you're making a name for yourself and you're really giving your all with this belt.
You want Kris Statlander, even if she's not defending the title, you want her wrestling a match every single week, whether it's on Collision or it's on Dynamite.
Yeah, I think it's important.
So, yeah, I think that you can quickly establish this as like the working title, especially considering that the other title was on Saraya, who doesn't work that much. So I think that right now they're doing a good job with Statlander. She's had multiple defenses. This is the first one where it's got a bit of outside the Jade thing, because that was just a one-off, but it had the storyline because that was the person that she beat for the title, getting her rematch. So there was something to it. This is the first one that has a bit of like bite to it for me because of how they presented Julia Hart. As like, obviously she's got a fantastic entrance, she's got a fantastic look, and she's got Brody King beside her. So it's like, I don't know, it's like a Wednesday Addams and Lurch kind of relationship in that regard. But
Julia doesn't look anything like Lurch. What are you talking about?
But I think that she's obviously got the mist and the more spooky aesthetic associated with her. I think that she is more of a character, and that can help elevate this match. Because I think that even though she's getting a lot better, and it's good that she's getting the reps in, Julia's still a couple of steps behind Statlander in the ring. So, but Statlander has a good reputation of being able to lift people up to her level. So hopefully she'll be able to do it in this one as well. Albeit said, she will probably defend the title here.
Yeah, I'm going Statlander retaining for sure. I don't imagine that they spent all that time waiting on Jade Cargill to drop the belt to Statlander for Statlander to lose right now.
I want to stick on the women a little bit. No, I don't think that just the addition of more women's matches solves anything.
No. Quantity and quality don't equate to each other just outright.
I know that there are people who do feel that way. Like, oh, well, if there was just more than one match. Because there is also the weird trend. I shouldn't call it a weird trend, but there is a trend of Tony Khan will immediately mention, yeah, actually, the women's match was our highest rated segment for whatever show. And that immediately leads to people going, well, then book them better, you know? And I think they need to figure it out. But I don't think that just throwing Yuka Sakazaki against Emi Sakura on the pre-show is enough of a give back. Like, I'd rather them really formulate a plan instead of just, okay, we hear that you're mad. Well, the women will just main event every TV show, and we'll tell you that that's the answer.
That's like the thing that happens in movies. People don't want to see a, quote, strong female character that is infallible and just beats everybody and has no character development because you're worried about them being criticized for having a weak moment. They want strong female characters. You know the difference between Captain Marvel in the first Captain Marvel film being like, you're too emotional. It's like, she doesn't show any emotions in this whole fucking movie. She's got no character. And then you look at like Ellen Ripley in Alien and you're like, hell yeah. You know what I mean? Like, some people just have the wrong approach of how they think that they can solve it in one fell swoop. And there are definitely those people out there that are like, you know what would fix everything? If AEW just created a whole show and, you know, if Rampage was just only women every single week, there you go, it's fixed. And it's like, but if the matches are, like you said, just, you know, Yuka Sakazaki versus Emi Sakura, then are you going to care? Or, like, do you actually want stories? Do you actually want them to be written on par with the men's division?
Yeah, they need more. They need more fleshed out stories. They need more promo battle segments. They need more, just overall character development on their side of things. Because it is, it is too just match orientated. And there's a guy who likes just throwing two guys together or two girls together if they're like really good and just want to see the match, then that's totally fine for a while. But in order for it to be sustainable, there has to be a dedicated focus on their characters and feuds as well, which I think that has been sorely lacking throughout the women's division's time. So, we can just always live in hope that it will change with the usual expectation that it won't. But the one final thing about the women's side of things, where are we, yes or no, on Mercedes for this show?
I'm going to say no.
I'm going to say yes. I think I'm going to say yes to about 3 major crazy things happening on this show, and Mercedes is probably one of them.
See, I'm no on Mercedes, but I'm yes on Mariah May.
Didn't the most recent thing come out about Mariah May being that she is not as much interested or something?
So, you know how wrestlers lie, Tony?
True.
Yeah, they really lied. Did you? Wrestling is back, Tony. Wrestlers are lying.
I don't trust people saying that. They're very good at trying to subvert the fact that they are going somewhere, but tell people that they won't be going somewhere. So, I think that, let me put it this way, they would be a stupid decision not to sign her if she's available, because I'd say I don't watch Stardom like all the time, but it's like when I do see it, she is very talented. She's tall. She's beautiful. She's literally anything they could want for somebody to come in and just immediately go after Kris Statlander and the TBS title, or just to be, a prominent figure on TV. I think that she's got a lot of upside. And obviously, if you do have Mercedes, the Mercedes becomes the focal point, but there's no reason why you shouldn't be stacking up with as much good female talent as you possibly can. Yeah, bring in Mercedes. She has a ready-made feud with Saraya over the back of, the fact that Mercedes was the person, obviously not intentionally, but was in the ring with Saraya when her career previously ended. And then Mariah May can be a good focus for the TBS title instead. But I'm hopeful for at least one of them to show up.
Of the TBS championship. I'm going to be honest, I'm not super duper familiar with Mariah May. Do I need to is this somebody that is really going to be a talking point?
I think so. Just from, again, I know Stardom is a different level, but obviously the big thing about Stardom is that it prides itself on having the best women's wrestling in the world. And I think that it's certainly arguable that it's up there. I mean, considering the facts of, especially over the past year, the quality of some of WWE's and AEW stuff, it certainly leaps above that. So, and Mariah is, I was like, she's not the upper echelon of what there is in Stardom, but she is very, very solid. I think people underestimate her because of the way that she looks.
That they just think that she's another model that got signed.
Yeah, exactly.
And,
Whereas she takes this very seriously. You don't go to Japan for a tour of a year pretty much if you don't take this seriously. Especially because she's British, she doesn't speak the language that well. So it's she took a big I'd say risk, but she took a big step going there, and I think she's pretty ready made for US television in some way. And I think I'd hope that AEW would try and seize that opportunity before WWE inevitably does.
She was on their radar, at least. I remember them.
But she should be in everyone's radar.
Yeah, but I know that a year or two ago or something, because I don't know too much about her, but I remember seeing her name pop up. And of course, the first thing you notice is what they look like and all. And it's yeah, okay, that makes sense. WWE would be interested in her. She fits the WWE mold. But I think that the story had been WWE had told her, get some more seasoning and then come back to us, which is that happens a lot. And then they usually end up missing out on those people because they just don't want to take the investment. Which I don't understand why they still have that mentality after all this years. They, obviously they missed out on an MJF. They missed out on they could have gotten Samoa Joe a lot earlier and had a big run with him. And I think that they're going to miss out on her. I think obviously AEW tends to snatch people up, and wouldn't shock me. But I don't think that Mercedes is going to be doing anything here because of the fact that it doesn't really seem to me like there's anything for her to do other than to potentially just be in the crowd again. And I guess this is a good time to mention one of the hot tags and kind of tie this into this discussion. But one of the hot tag things here, I'll just flick a hot tag on the screen right now, is that MLW, CMLL, and New Japan are forming a, quote, strategic alliance, and that there's going to be no AAA talent, for instance, appearing in MLW because of the difference between AAA and CMLL. And then that's got people talking again about something that's been happening these past couple of weeks with this whole WrestleDream thing. WrestleDream, of course, is something that's coming out there because of Antonio Inoki, and it's like, oh, but this isn't even Forbidden Door. Shouldn't that be more of a New Japan thing? And Tony Khan keeps talking about this being a new era, and a lot of speculation is going around that maybe he's, quote unquote, buying New Japan. If there's some kind of a connection between all this stuff, and maybe that's something to talk about when it comes to the Mercedes element of it all. Where do you guys think this is all going?
So I'm all for the quote unquote smaller companies collaborating with each other. That is a good way to freshen things up, bring some new talent in every now and again to your different companies, and just totally freshen the scene up, because it can become a bit stale with the same people always in the same matches over and over again. And certainly, as I say, the one I watch the most frequently is New Japan, so I can definitely say that it could definitely use some freshening up in certain areas. So I'm not super familiar with MLW or CMLL very honestly, but I'm sure there are plenty of. I've seen a couple of them. I'm sure there's plenty of talent there that could use the opportunities to expand themselves outwards. As far as Tony Khan buying New Japan is concerned, I'm not a fan of that. As much as I like the work that he's doing with AEW, it's a case of not even just a case of like Ring of Honor being what Ring of Honor is right now. It's more a case of I'm not the urge to merge guy. That's Tony, and I like the fact that there should be multiple companies being run by different people with different visions of professional wrestling. And having just another one under the Khan family means that you're just gradually moving towards another conglomerate taking over the wrestling world. It's like, again, I don't want one or two people to be at the head of professional wrestling and nothing else to be going on. There should be viable alternatives out there. I mean, if he's purchasing it and then you say like I own New Japan, but I'm giving the reins of creative to this guy or this person, or it's staying with Gedo or whatever, then that's fine, because he basically is then just using it because okay, I can just get Okada to come. I can get Okada or Naito or whoever to come over for a show in AEW anytime, and then bring them back to New Japan and send my guys over to New Japan and find maybe some kind of way of featuring that all on, I don't know, Max or through another TV network. So there are benefits to it, but in an ideal world, I'd want them to be kept as have the partnership still, but actually as companies keep them independent.
These strategic alliances, not to, kind of no sell it, but like, okay, cool, they're gonna continue exchanging talent. MLW does this with multiple promotions throughout the year. I think that, of course, New Japan, it gets people more excited because it's New Japan. But I think they've already been doing that with Kushida and names like that. And I consider it to be successful. And I consider MLW to be a strong candidate for that number 3 spot if they were just in a more viable place in terms of the platform they're presented on. So that's cool.
I'd say that absolutely, if like strategic alliance is now like signed, sealed, delivered, the biggest winners out of this are MLW, because they're the ones probably with the like CMLL will have like they're one of the 2 top promotions in their country. New Japan is the biggest promotion in their country. MLW is battling out with Impact and GCW for whoever can take the number 3 slot. And so them having access to some of the top talent in both Mexico and Japan would be more of a game changer for them than like with all the love in the world, a guy like is it like Alex Hammerstone going over to New Japan? Like, I'm sure he would have a good time, and I'm sure he put on some good matches. But it's not like I'm definitely going to tune into New Japan now that guy's going over.
You should. Alex Hammerstone's actually like very, very good.
I know he's very good, but like he's not, he's not a guy.
I'm looking through the roster right now for MLW because I've not actually even seen a full MLW show. And I'm like, all right, some of these people I obviously recognize, some of the people I have never heard of in my entire life. Like, I mean, clearly I know who Matt Cardona is, or Minoru Suzuki, or David Boy Smith Jr. I don't know people like Mr. Thomas or Ichiban or Love Doug. So I don't know anything about that. I'm surprised to see that like Ricardo Rodriguez is here, and there's Jimmy Lloyd. Of course, I've worked with him. Brittany Blake, I've worked with her. So that's cool that like maybe she'll pop up and all that stuff. Fucking Kimchi. Kimchi's on this roster.
I think they're playing fast and loose with their roster page.
Don King?
Some of those people probably only turned up one time.
Don King
Suzuki is not an MLW wrestler. He's a New Japan wrestler that occasionally has worked for MLW. So
Don King is the benefactor of Momiye Fight Club. Yes, Don King. That's a real thing that's happening.
Don King. That's not like...
Don King. That's a real thing that's happening, yes.
I think the more one of the interesting things out of this as well, this strategic alliance, is how not how it necessarily affects AEW, but I don't imagine AEW can be part of this alliance even if they wanted to, because a lot of AEW talent works for AAA, and that's why you never see a relationship. You'll probably never see until that ends a relationship between AEW and CMLL, even though New Japan has a very strong relationship with CMLL. It's a bit like all these complexities and different breaking points, just because the two top Mexican promotions absolutely despise each other.
And that kind of makes me even feel less so that there's some kind of announcement that he's like buying New Japan or something. I think that
he's not. Look, that's the thing I didn't address. He ain't buying New Japan. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But if he buys New Japan, I'm afraid, because. Go ahead.
They put it this way: he's not buying New Japan on tomorrow's on a Wrestle Dream show.
Sunday's
He's not coming out and saying I've bought New Japan Pro Wrestling, because it's very hard to hide that stuff from people. You could probably do it with Ring of Honor because that was a company that was essentially dead at the time anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So there's nothing.
We're talking international relationships.
Yeah, you can't do that with a company like New Japan and AEW. If there has been a deal reached, people would know about it before he gets the opportunity to announce it. So
yeah, I highly doubt that that's the case. But then again,
you could become an investor in it.
It might be something like that. That might be why they do the whole new era thing. It might be like, well, I'm like a partial stakes owner in some fashion, or I mean, it could be something else
as well. Like, how do you make that announcement to a packed audience? Hey, I own 2% of New Japan. Yeah.
I think that he'll be so excited that he'll just assume that everybody is just as excited too. Like, he'll just be like,
admittedly, he does have a contagious vibe.
I don't know if it'll officially go over that way. I highly doubt, because it seems like he's more excited than other people are in certain things where he's just going to be like, man, isn't it great that we got like an X number, the demographic, whatever. And people will be like, yeah, I guess. And he'll be like, well, yeah, But like, I think that that's a good chance that there could be an announcement for that, because it just does strike me weird as being like, all right, this is Wrestle Dream. This is like an Inoki thing or whatever. There's a new era. And then what is it going to be? And that's because the next pay-per-view is going to be on Max. That doesn't sound like starting a new era.
Look. I'm glad you're underselling it like that, because you give me the chance to say this. Anyone who thinks that is underwhelming in any way can go to hell. Okay, that is very important. That is very beneficial.
For starting a new era, though? Because that's not the start of a new era. That's the next pay-per-view.
Yeah, well, no, we're starting a new era and closing a chapter. This is the close of a chapter, everything from here on in is a new era.
I look at that as, well, then you should announce that we're starting a new era afterward. Not that like this pay-per-view is starting a new era. I mean, maybe that's just semantics, but like,
yeah, that very
to me,
much so.
to me, that's kind of like, okay, well, you know, WrestleMania 40 is the start of a new era because it's the first one or whatever, and then you start getting into like, oh, but you know, technically Fastlane's being produced with the TKO thing, and like, you know, I mean, like that kind of thing. I don't look at the WrestleMania that we had with the network launch, for instance. That wasn't the start of the network launch. It was just the biggest show soonest after. Catch my drift?
Yeah, no, I gotcha. I just think it's totally semantics. And I don't want people poo-pooing this announcement if that's what it is, because that's very important. Because these shows are too expensive. And they are going to be more frequent one way or the other. And I think it's very exciting.
That also just makes me kind of go like, but then where's the connection with Inoki? And, you know, are you just sort of...
Okay, look. Okay. This man is honoring Inoki because he wants to honor Inoki. I think we're putting too much weight into, oh, you said this was going to be honoring Inoki. Yes, it is. Because he's a wrestling fan. And that's all you really need. But I think this could be a great show and a great start of a new era. I'm talking like him now, so I'm going to shut up.
So we'll see what that announcement is as well. But let's get back to some of the other matches on this card. Let's talk about, if we're talking other companies and stuff, we've got the strong openweight champion and the ROH world champion, Eddie Kingston, defending both of his titles against the ROH pure champion. So an ROH title and a New Japan title defended against another ROH champion on an AEW show. And it's not going to change hands. This match is just a match because it's a match and there's nothing to it. It's just, well, I guess Shibata. And
I don't know. Shibata can create a new Triple Crown in wrestling. That's a thing that they keep saying. You never know.
That ain't happening. Kingston's retaining. They're going to have the same match that I've seen basically Kingston have with a lot of other people. It'll be fine.
It's going to be one of the greatest matches. It's going to be the best, arguably the best match on the show. But then again, there's a lot of competition for that. But I'm so pumped for this match. It's going to be so great. Just, you know, this is your guys slap the shit out of each other match of the evening. That's what you get from this one. The only reason why it can't be for all the titles is because I'm pretty sure Eddie Kingston probably doesn't want to wrestle a pure rules match. But yeah, I'm really, really excited for this one.
I mean, look, I love the dynamic we have here where Cody's just like, whatever. And Callum's like, I love this so much. This is going to fucking rule. I wish Shibata had more of a chance because I love Shibata. But Eddie just got this belt and he's going to be a great fighting champion. And I see him being champion for a long, long time. So it's got to be Eddie. But this should be the Antonio Inoki tribute match if there ever was one.
Do you think that they're going to end up like kind of calling it that?
No.
No,
I do think the spirit of Inokiism will be alive and well.
The spirit of Inokiism.
Oh, Callum knows what I'm talking about.
But it's just the phrasing. It's funny. The spirit of Inokiism.
Well, if it's the spirit of Inokiism, then like somebody's gonna then surely some MMA fighter is gonna come into this as well and try and get involved and
just get slapped.
But to be fair, actually, that was one of the rumors, wasn't there, going around that like if Moxley had kept the international title and wasn't injured, that they were going to bring in a guy from outside of AEW to wrestle him at WrestleDream. Apparently, it's going to be someone from, and I would say MMA, but it'd be probably like the Bloodsport type of background.
I didn't know that. I was actually just assuming it would be Shibata because he hasn't done the match yet. But I could see it being Tom Lawler. You get some real Inokiism. Yeah. Like, it's exciting. This is going to be a hell of a match. A bunch of people are going to just cream themselves because they're even watching it. And I think both men will deliver. I think Shibata is getting better as he goes. And Kingston is more confident in himself. And this should be a really fun match.
We're all going Kingston, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's pretty locked in there. One match that I don't know who's going to win, though, is the 4-way number one contenders match for the AEW World Tag Team title shot, which, correct me if I'm wrong, it's that they'll get a shot at any time, is what the graphic had said and stuff. Is that necessarily
a future title match? So
it's just sort of generic enough. It's not that it's like the Money in the Bank type of thing, right? Where it's like they get to cash in when they get the title shot. It's more just they'll get it at some point.
It's not like they can just bring a referee down and say we're getting a tag title shot right now, but it's just a case of this will give you a future. Yeah. You're guaranteed a future tag opportunity.
I figured that would be the case, but then I was like, the way that they're phrasing it like that, it's also slightly different from what they normally phrase it, because usually it's for a future title shot. And then I was just like, I don't know, maybe I missed something there, but it's the Young Bucks against the Guns, against the Lucha Bros, against Orange Cassidy and Hook. And prior to Dynamite, I was looking at this and going, I mean, I guess it's Young Bucks so that you could do FTR Young Bucks again, or maybe it's Guns so you could go back around to that and then set up something with, Bullet Club Gold, getting the tag titles and whatever. Obviously, Rey Fenix was not meant to be the international champion right now, so maybe the plan was to do Lucha Bros, and that's just sort of that we've seen people hold two belts at the same time before and whatever. But I ultimately go, I think that's going to be Hook and Orange Cassidy because they're the most interesting ones to get that title shot.
I guess, but I'm not thrilled on that. I'd rather the FTR take on the Lucha Bros, or even if they do another match with the Bucks, they can do like an Iron Man or whatever. I'm not sold on Hook and Cassidy, but I trust AEW enough to make me care at some point.
I think the Hook and Cassidy thing is, it's a little bit disappointing because they seem to have just after Orange Cassidy, after that incredible run as international champion, has now just fallen into being part of a makeshift tag team rather than being pushed towards. I probably would have been down for him challenging MJF at Full Gear or a big show for the world title and just seeing how that goes. But yeah, it feels like it's a bit of a fall from grace for him, but you could obviously resolve that by having him win this match, and then he won't win the tag titles likely, but he gets an opportunity at them. But I think that also because I didn't actually give my prediction for the AEW World Tag Title match, and I think Aussie Open are going to win. That I think that you basically have anybody win the match then because you've got a new fresh tag team as the World Tag Champions. I think it will predicate on what happens in however order it is, but I don't think if the Young Bucks win this match, then FTR I don't think can win the title match because you've just had the third match between these two. You're going to do the fourth one straight away after they've spread the other ones out over the course of 3 years. I think that's very unlikely. They've already they beat the Guns for the tag title, so I don't think they're going to go back to them. The only team, obviously it would either be the Lucha Bros or Orange Cassidy and Hook if you're going to keep FTR, just because it's more a match we're not as familiar with or haven't seen that often, if at all. So if the Lucha Brothers win or Orange Cassidy and Hook win, then I'm more inclined to think that FTR are going to retain the championships. But if any other ones win, then I'm pretty locked in on Aussie Open winning the titles.
That's why I'm almost more so thinking that this match is going to come as not necessarily like the bathroom break, but that this is going to be one of those matches bookending two more important matches later in the show.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So I'm thinking FTR is going to retain, and then we're going to go into this match being like, who's going to fight FTR?
Yeah, I can see that being the case. I just kind of like Callum said, and I'm glad he articulated it better. It's very disappointing for Cassidy. I kind of see him being the next person to turn on Hook, but even still, I don't want that because I think he had worked himself up to a level where my immediate thought was, oh, he'll probably win the Grand Slam tournament until they did the angle with Joe, because that's the level he's at. They can't do another, all right, Cassidy worked himself up to that level, and we're just going to kind of plug him in and out of the card in random spots. I want to see him used properly.
he kind of strikes me as Rey Mysterio level of like, I don't know if you should ever turn him heel.
Oh no, he should never be a heel. I don't think. Not in AEW at the very least.
If you were gonna turn him, I think Hook would be the only guy that the fans would boo.
You mean that they would boo Orange Cassidy?
They would boo Cassidy,
yeah. Let's see here. What do we bounce around to? Let's go talk about the 2 out of 3 falls match for the AEW TNT Championship. I like what they did here, where they decided to have Christian pin Luchasaurus, and now he actually is the TNT champion. And that he was saying to JR, like, I don't know what you're talking about. I've been defending this title for past couple of months and stuff. I think this is about time for this to end, though. And I don't want it to end with Darby Allin winning the belt, but I kind of feel like that's going to happen.
What I want to go ahead, Cal.
Oh no, you start this time.
What I want to happen is Darby Allin wins the belt. Christian has a bit of a backstage kerfluffle with Jackson Cash, and we know where this is going. What I think will happen is Nick Wayne will probably cost Darby Allin the match here.
That'd be quite a step.
God.
That'd be quite a step to take already. It's not out of the realms of possibility, but I think that doing that in Seattle, in essentially Nick Wayne's backyard, I think that's a bit of an interesting move to take. Also, noticed basically by going through the card here, they have a lot of people from Washington on the AEW roster.
Yeah, that is a bit weird.
Like Darby, Nick,
Bryan,
Swerve. Yeah, Danielson. It's like, yeah, they're quite well set for this type of show. If you just want to see like a load of hometown heroes.
I didn't even think about it that way. I haven't been paying attention to like Swerve being from the area.
I don't know if he's specifically from the area,
Seattle,
but he did a lot of his work in the Northwest. That's where he kind of made his name before going to like WWE and stuff. But I think that as far as this match goes, I'm very much looking forward to it. They've had excellent matches so far, and anytime they've come together to do this, and I doubt this is going to be any different. I like the fact that they said in the promo segment with JR in the build up to this that this is the final time. So whoever wins, whoever loses, that's it, and there's going to be no rematches, no anything like that. So yeah, that's cool to see. I personally think that Christian's going to win because, by all accounts and reports, people are very, very, very high on Christian right now, and so they should be. He's doing fantastic work. As much as I'd like to see Darby Allin be a champion again, because I think he's, like, again, also a guy that's doing fantastic work week in, week out, and probably deserves some kind of reward for it. I think that right now you stick with the hotter hand, and the hotter hand is Christian. I don't think there's going to be any kind of... there probably are going to be shenanigans, but I think it's more likely just to come from Luchasaurus rather than from Nick Wayne.
Yeah, I'm looking at this more as Luchasaurus can be like the one that turns on Christian and cost him the match.
Because I thought they said Luchasaurus would just not... He wouldn't be there.
Yeah, but wrestlers lie.
Yeah.
Wrestlers do lie.
How many times has it been banned from ringside, but the referee's down, so then the person comes out or something, you know? Steel cage is meant to keep everybody out, and they almost guaranteed happen every single time.
No Edge. Let's talk about it.
There's obviously a chance that Edge pops up here.
He's a free agent Saturday night. Everybody seems to think that he's going. I know we've talked about it a lot in this podcast. I know, Callum, you're not totally down for it. At this point, I think the only disappointing outcome overall would be if he's just like, yeah, I'm not going, but also I finished my career. See ya. Because it was just a strange lack of fanfare with that last match with Sheamus. And I want to see him immediately paired with or against Christian, because I think we've learned, especially with a guy like Edge and a guy like Christian, to be fair, we don't wait with these things because you never know what the future holds. So if you're going to do it, just do it. And I'm kind of hoping we do see Adam Copeland on Sunday. I'm not sold that we will, but I think it would be a huge deal.
I do at least recall, I think, in the last after the All Out press conference with Christian, he was asked about, well, not directly, but he was essentially asked about Edge, and then his response was, "I have no friends in wrestling other than Luchasaurus,"
which is amazing.
So it makes me think that if Edge is coming in, he's coming for that TNT title rather than pairing up with Christian and going after FTR.
Now, I would be mad. Would you be mad if the TNT Championship kind of just became like Edge versus Christian? You can't think the international title isn't like kind of the young spry.
I'm not saying that's what I want to happen. I'm saying that's what's going to happen. Like, that's the as I say, I'm still not convinced about the idea of Edge coming, because I just don't think. I think he's a big star in wrestling. I don't think he's a big star in just, the overall zeitgeist of things. Like, it's not like you're signing Cena or The Rock or anything like that. I'm not saying that obviously they would cost a lot, but considering how much Edge is likely going to cost him, I don't know whether the returns are there in terms of massive rating boosts and stuff like that.
So hear me out. Doesn't that make him the perfect guy for AEW? If he's not big in the zeitgeist, but he is big to the wrestling fan, would that make him perfect?
I mean, sure, but I think, again, it's one of those stuff that other people look more deeply into, but I do listen to those people who look more deeply into it, and even after his return, Edge consistently isn't a needle mover in terms of ratings. He's never really been throughout his career. The only time that he did really pop a big number was when he had sex in the ring with Lita. That's kind of what he built his like the second part of his career on, was the Radar Superstar, based on that one incident. And as like, I'm sure he would at least initially do some good stuff with AEW and get some more eyes on it. But I think that there are limits to his. Let's say, I'm not expecting, if Edge comes in, you're not getting up from a 900,000 people watching a week to 1.1 million or something like that. You're just going to be maybe 10,000 extra. Who knows? But it's not going to be sizable enough for me to be giving him like a $4-5 million contract.
Now, wrestling is a business.
It's Tony's money, not mine. So.
Now, wrestling is a business, but I also kind of get the vibe. Not that I know Adam Copeland, but I do get the vibe that he might not be Kurt Angle charging $3 million for 10 matches. He might be like, considerably lower and just want to kind of do some fun stuff on the way out the door for real. I think with someone like Edge, it could be the highest chance of a win-win in a case like this, because you're going to get a guy who really does just want to help the next generation. Like, even his run in WWE, as lackluster as I felt it was, he was always about like, I want to do stuff. I'm not just trying to work Cena and Orton. He worked Orton for that first one because, I got to feel comfortable. But everything else he did was like, let's try to get Rollins to another level, and Finn and Damian. I think this could be really good for AEW. And again, I kind of hope we see it, because I wasn't enthralled with the last run of Edge. So maybe a fun AEW run leaves things on a happy note.
But if you had to say, is Edge popping up at WrestleDream or not? What's your prediction?
Oh, well, we don't have money on this. I'm going to say yes, because fuck it. It's Fun. Tony Khan pops and the world pops, and I think it works.
I'm leaning towards no at the moment.
I'm gonna also go no, but wouldn't shock me. I would be more surprised if Mercedes pops up than if Edge does, for that matter.
Yeah, out of the three that we've mentioned as potentially debuting on this show, Edge is actually the most realistic out of all of them, I think.
Yeah. Let's see here. Let's talk about Adam Page versus Swerve Strickland. I really don't have anything to talk about here. To be right, like, I like them both, but this seems just sort of like that's them.
Like, again, that's a guy that doesn't watch AEW.
Yeah, that's it.
But
like, I mean, their segment last night, for instance, it was just like, okay, well, you know, they've got some talking points, and you know, but it doesn't really, like, there's nothing that strikes me as like I'm going to put this on my list of like something that I would be interested in for storyline of the year, for the end of the year awards or whatever. It's just sort of like, okay, well, you know, you're doing some stuff and it is what it is. Like, there's nothing special about it. I should say it that way, I guess.
I think it's a starting point to hopefully something a bit bigger. I'm going to say, like, it's definitely not like storyline of the year right now, but I think they've set a good foundation. I mean, the whole thing is being built around the fact that Adam Page has gotten complacent, which is due to the fact that he's not wrestling a lot of singles matches over the course of this year. It's been a fairly long time since he was world champion or even fighting for the world championship. And then Swerve saying, well, if I got the opportunity you did, then I would be
the first black champion in AEW for the world champ.
Yeah. So it's very, like, you know, it's very pro wrestling. It's in the way they say it's a very, very staple feud of like, you're getting all these opportunities. I want the opportunities you got, and if I need to beat you to get those opportunities, that's what I'm going to do. I just think that these are two guys that one of them is a bona fide main eventer and one of them is a guy who has the potential to be a bona fide main eventer in AEW, going up against each other. I say, like, even if the feud itself, there are certain elements where there might not be as much interest in. I think just the fact of seeing these two together and it's not really a match that I would have immediately pictured in my mind makes it very, very interesting for me. And as I say, I think this is going to be another show out performance from Swerve to try and help him reach that next level.
I hope so, because this is mostly, in my mind, this is where Swerve needs to win and he needs to level up. Because if he loses or if he has a bad showing, it's going to seem like, okay, well, there's a reason why Hangman's been champion and Swerve is somebody who still hasn't had that match with Keith Lee, you know?
And probably never will at this point, I imagine. But I think that he should win this match, but I think that they should continue the story post WrestleDream into Full Gear, because I think there's a lot more they can explore off the back of a result like that. But whether it's Page questioning himself, I think even though Swerve should win and use this as an opportunity to level up, I also believe this should be the starting point for the resurrection of Adam Page back into being the top guy in AEW, or top guy, the main character in AEW is probably the more fitting phrase.
Your mileage may vary, as both of these men just demonstrated with their different reactions. I think there are a lot of people who feel like this is Adam Page return to form, and this is all because, you know, Punk's not around. Like, he kind of said as much on last night's Dynamite without saying, you know, he said there'd been a black cloud over his head for the last 18 months, and now it's not there. I do think Swerve wins. I think this is a match that diehard AEW fans are really looking forward to. But I think the more money for me will be when they eventually have a Texas Death match at Full Gear, or a Lights Out match, or something with more violence and more stakes. But this strikes me as a feud that's going to get very personal very quickly.
That's kind of how I'm looking at it, where they need to amp it up to the next level for me to be like really invested in it. And they've got a chance that they could go in the wrong direction here. And then it's just Page wins and he had a match against Swerve because we wanted to get them on the card and that's it. And that's what I'm a little bit worried about. But I do think that this fits more the first 2 years of AEW mold, where you take a guy like a Swerve Strickland, who was not in a prominent spot in WWE, and you put him in AEW, and then it seems like, yeah, you could do something more with this guy. You know, Pac, for instance, or Sean Spears for that first, 2 years or so.
2 months.
Yeah, first 2 months, maybe, I guess you could put it that way. But, that's kind of a little bit more true to form in that way. And I'm hoping that that's what comes out of this. But right now, I'm like, okay, well, sell me on continuing this and me putting more of an investment in it rather than just going, don't you like them? And then, obviously that works in some cases, and we'll talk about that for the main event at the very least. But
I think their promo work was a bit more than don't you like them. I think people really get connected to Hangman Page in particular when he talks about his mental struggles and the idea that, he's still here despite battling a depression and feeling like there's a black cloud over his head. I think they got a lot of fans in. Their core audience, it connected perfectly.
I'll say this, Hangman Page talking about a black cloud over his head and kind of clearing his depression out and all that works a lot better than Roxanne Perez being like, oh, I've got anxiety, so I guess I'll drop the belt. I'll talk about that for the end of the year awards. It's one of my least favorite stories this whole year. Trios match. Chris Jericho, Kenny Omega, and Kota Ibushi against the Don Callis family. You got Will Ospreay, Konosuke Takeshita, and Sammy Guevara. It's going to be good.
Yeah, again, I would say understatement, but
yeah, it's definitely one of the selling points.
I'm so down for these crazy 6-man tags they're doing now. It's just great. I also kind of find it quite funny, and again, your mileage may vary on this, but Sammy Guevara turning on Chris Jericho because he was standing on his own 2 feet, and then basically become the fourth wheel in the Don Callis family behind Don Callis, Konosuke Takeshita, and Will Ospreay. It's it's quite an interesting thing for him to be part of that now. But as I these are 6 absolute top guys going up against each other in this match, and yeah, I think this is going to be so much fun, and it'll probably lead into 3 separate singles matches for Full Gear as well.
Yep.
You do. Yeah,
I would assume that at least we would get Sammy Guevara versus Chris Jericho at Full Gear. I don't think that we're going to get Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay until Wrestle Kingdom.
No. Takeshita and Ibushi, though, is a good option. Or you have Takeshita and Ibushi on some Dynamite show leading up to it, and then you do the rematch between Takeshita and Omega at Full Gear.
Yeah, that could be maybe where they go. Maybe Ospreay is just out of the mix.
Yeah. And
then
it would
be fun. A 3-way dance between Guevara, Jericho, and Omega, with the winner facing Max at Winter is Coming. And then you tell that story while also saying, hey, these are 3 guys who want to still be champion.
I think also having this match is just making it more and more of a lock that Will Ospreay's coming to AEW next year.
Totally.
Which
whether or not Tony Khan buys New Japan.
Yeah. So I think we're not going. I was pretty much pretty much expecting that we were going to get Ospreay versus Omega at Wrestle Kingdom, like the 3rd match. I think now that it feels pretty set that Tony probably wouldn't want that to happen. Actually, I think both Tony wouldn't want that to happen, so he can do it at a big show for AEW. Like, I don't know, you've got another Wembley to fill at some point, so maybe that would be an option. And also, I don't think New Japan would want that as well, because if Ospreay is leaving in pretty much after Wrestle Kingdom, he needs to drop the title to a New Japan guy. And yeah, so I think that he's going to drop it to one of the 3 Musketeers, the new 3 Musketeers in New Japan at Wrestle Kingdom, probably Shota Umino. But,
are there any New Japan big events before Wrestle Kingdom that he could drop it?
Oh yeah, no, actually, realistically, he's just defended the title against Yota Tsuji at Destruction in Kobe, which is one of the last remaining big shows they have. because now you're moving into World Tag League and the Junior World Tag League as well. So that's going to be the main focus. That's always the main focus towards the end of the year before Wrestle Kingdom. So realistically, he's probably not. He's got one title defense that I'm aware of because I'm going to be seeing it live against Zack Sabre Jr. at Royal Quest. But then again, Zack Sabre Jr. is another guy that might be going to AEW in the future as well. So I think it's realistic that Ospreay defends the title against a new guy they want to have. Whoever that ends up being, it'll be a New Japan guy that beats him for the title at Wrestle Kingdom. But yeah, and then he'll come to AEW and we'll all have a good time. But yeah, this is just another good opportunity. I mean, the fact of the matter is, like, he's one of the only two New Japan guys on this tribute to Antonio Inoki. So, but yeah, I was like, you can't really go wrong with this match. It's just going to be a lot of fun. And I think
I'm going Don Callis family winning.
Yeah, I part of me wants to go Don Callis family, but realistically, like, Jericho and the Golden Elite have been beat. Well, the Golden Elite in particular have been beaten by like a drum by this team throughout the entire times, and maybe you do need to give them a win at some point. But who do you pin? You don't want to pin Takeshita or Guevara. You certainly unlikely to pin Ospreay. Like, if you pin Sammy, then what's the point of him even joining? Is he just this family's Wheeler Yuta at that point then?
That's why I think that Guevara can get the win on Jericho here and then be like, see, I can pin you. And then that sets up the almost kind of rubber match, but not really. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're right. Don Callis family should win this one.
Yeah, the way that you laid that out, in particular, Guevara pinning Jericho, I think is exactly what needs to happen.
Then we got our main event. Bryan Danielson versus Zack Sabre Jr., a match that is essentially just one of those ones of, hey, don't you want to watch them? And it's like, yeah, I do. This match is going to be really good.
Yeah, this is one where you can't use that as a criticism. It is just a pure fact.
Sometimes it just works like that.
They're going to deliver. Like, it's going to be good. It's literally the dream match of WrestleDream. And I think Danielson has to get the win.
Yeah, definitely going Danielson. Build him up even more, make him seem like he's even stronger of an opponent for Okada to fight again.
I mean, then again, we're talking about Danielson. He was willing to put over Drew Gulak if need be.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago in WWE. So maybe he's just like, nah, Junior, ZSJ is the best in the world. So let's give it to him. Either way, I think it should be one of the most fun technical wrestling matches of the last few years. I think we're getting Final Countdown again. I think that's going to be a pay-per-view tradition now. I'm looking forward to this, and I think it'll be something that never happens again, but one that wrestling fans will really enjoy.
I mean, I've been so excited for this match ever since it was, well, pretty much nailed on for the first Forbidden Door show before Danielson's injury. And yeah, I think that it's going to be a very interesting match, very, very technical at the start of it before they then get into more of the more common New Japan style strike exchange. I think it's going to be a very New Japan match, but a Zack Sabre Jr. New Japan match where it's a lot of very convoluted holds and transitions and all of that cool stuff. And Danielson is like one of the only guys that can go pretty step for step with Zack Sabre Jr. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Zack wins because like he's got a big match coming up at the New Japan show coming up, and yeah, Bryan Danielson is, as we all know, very, very giving in terms of putting people over. But, you know, he has just beaten Ricky Starks twice in a row in singles matches. I think they're trying to give him a big, big final push if this is his final year with the company, or at least final year as a full-time guy. So they probably will give him the victory here. And, yeah, the likelihood is he'll probably go to Wrestle Kingdom to wrestle Okada and give Okada the win back. And yeah, move on from there. So he probably should get the victory here. But either way, I think we're all winners after this match.
Yeah, that's kind of the vibe I'm getting as well. I guess my last point to bring up before we go on to the actual hot tags would be this major new era thing from Tony. Do we think it's starting the show, in the middle of the show? Is it closing the show? What do we think?
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, the question is, we don't know what he means by it, because he's always deliberately vague about this stuff. And like I say, we don't know if it's a new person joining that they think is going to be a game changer, or multiple people coming in they think are going to be changing the game, or the TV or the pay-per-view deal with Max, or anything along those lines, or even the fucking purchase of New Japan Pro Wrestling, or whatever they will ever end up being. But I think he'll dedicate a section for it. That's why I thought that Mercedes might be an option, because even though there's no like match here that she can immediately come in with, he could just come out on stage and say, "We've just signed the hottest free agent in women's wrestling, Mercedes Moné." And then even though she's not actually a free agent because she's contracted to New Japan, but I think that you could do something like that, but yeah, I think he will make an announcement somewhere in the show, whether it's a pre-recorded thing or it's live on the stage.
I'm thinking midway through, it's one of those kind of bathroom break type intermission moments where it's essentially like, okay, well, we just had a big match, like, say,
the 2 out of 3 falls or something.
Yeah, like the 2 out of 3 falls match.
Kingston,
yeah, and then it's like, okay, well, now we need a moment to just sort of let the audience kind of calm down. So, hey, let's talk about this thing, and have Tony Khan make this quick announcement and then run down. Maybe that's when Excalibur's like, oh, and by the way, remember, we got, this coming up this week on Dynamite and whatever, just to, do something like that. And
I think there's a good chance it kicks off the show, depending on especially if it's just, hey, we're gonna be on Max. Like, yeah, that can probably kick off the show.
I almost kind of feel like if it's bigger than the Max thing, then it'll kick off the show. But if it is the Max thing, I think that'll be midway through. Again, not to downplay the fact that the Max thing isn't important, because it definitely is. But I think midway through the show saying like, oh, and by the way, on the next pay-per-view, it's going to be on Max. So, sign up for that and you'll spend $30 for that instead of whatever the other, I mean, depending on what they do, a different price range or something like that. That might just be like, we would sort of announce that because we're very happy about that. To me, I think you start off a show being like, thanks for buying the pay-per-view, everybody. And next time you can't buy it through this means. You have to buy it through this. Okay, now let's get into the pro wrestling. Like, people might just be like, wait, what? Okay, well, now we're starting okay, never mind. Like, they'll forget about it and stuff. But if we were talking about the idea of where things go and streaming services and all that stuff, let's talk about the SAG-AFTRA strike, WGA strike, the fact that they're basically coming to an end. They've got some tentative deals going on right now. They have to sign some paperwork. They have to go through some, legal rigmarole and all that. But 2 things that have come out of this recently. One is that the TV show Heels has been canceled by Starz. And that's, for people who don't know, that it's a pro wrestling show that has had AJ Lee on it. It has had CM Punk on it. It's, of course, Stephen Amell's the driving force behind the whole thing. That, I'm sure, was partially canceled because of the strikes going on. And I'm sure part of it was just that probably wasn't getting the best amount of ratings prior to that. Anyway, very well could have been on the chopping block. But this is what happens when the strikes go down. They typically end up cutting things because in their minds, they go, well, how do we cut the amount of expenditures that we have? How do we make money? We've lost X amount of dollars from these strikes, so we'll just cancel TV shows. There's a thing with second seasons and the contract issues. Normally after the second season, it ends up being that a lot of people end up asking for much higher contracts. So that's why a lot of TV shows only make it to 2 seasons, because then those companies on the production side are like, oh, we're not going to justify paying you more. So I'm not surprised about that, but it does, take a hit to the pro wrestling scene. But even more so, a thing that I think people should be thinking about right now, and we're going to look back in 2 years and go, okay, this had an effect. These strikes coming to an end can affect what John Cena and The Rock are doing. There is a chance that this whole John Cena working through Crown Jewel thing, that he gets plucked from that. This could be the thing that prevents The Rock from doing WrestleMania or Elimination Chamber or whatever. There's been a lot of hubbub about, is The Rock going to host WrestleMania instead of wrestle at WrestleMania? Is The Rock going to appear at Elimination Chamber? I've been suspicious of the idea that The Rock is going to win the Royal Rumble, and that's one of the reasons why it's in Tampa and all that. So how do you guys feel about these strikes, the John Cena situation, The Rock situation, and if you've checked out Heels?
I have not checked out Heels. I will eventually just go through. Will now be the entire show, which is great for me because it avoids having to follow up.
I will say it ends on a cliffhanger, so
that sucks.
For anybody who hates that, it ends on a pretty big cliffhanger.
That sucks. Maybe they'll get a chance to finish it one day. First, Cena, I don't think Cena is going to be plucked from Crown Jewel or anything like that. I think he's locked for what he committed to WWE. The Rock, on the other hand, at this point, I will just get pissed off. Mainly because of his stuff in the last 2 weeks. There was no reason he needed to go on McAfee and announce that it was a lock, that he was going to work Roman in April this year. And then they said, oh, well, we'll put it on ice because the merger's coming up. He didn't have to say all that. You know what I mean? So, because everybody was thinking Cody's going to finish the story. So for him to just go in there and put all that in everybody's brain and then not deliver again just sucks. So, yeah, as far as The Rock, I'd be kind of upset. But John, I think, is pretty locked in. And if he can do Mania, he'll find a way to do Mania. If not, he gave us 2 months. And I think that that's pretty cool. And, yeah, I think good for the writers for getting everything they wanted. I didn't know the actors' strike had finished.
I mean, it's not really, but it's like they're winding down, essentially, it seems.
I mean, I'm not going to say that that's a fact until I see otherwise, because the writers was a bit more important. Because at least now with the writers, you can get back to the talk shows and the reality shows. So, and the actors had a bit more to fight about when it came to AI rights and perpetuity and stuff like that. So that can go on for a bit. So I'm not as worried for Rock and Cena yet.
Which, by the way, I mean, it's a different discussion for a different day. More so, maybe on the Fanboys Anonymous side of things and all. But I don't know 100% the ins and outs and stuff, obviously, because I'm not in SAG-AFTRA and all. But the Writers Guild and all, I look at the AI deal that they got, and I'm like, I don't feel like that's even much of a deal. It sort of seems like it's like, hey, you can't really use AI unless you use it. And I'm like, shit, isn't that just what they do now? Isn't that what's the difference here between you have to say that you used it, but not if you use it for inspiration, and then if you don't use it for that, then there's no way to tell if you plugged something into ChatGPT and then just said you came up with the idea,
Oh, there's ways to tell. I mean, if it's complete nonsense.
I mean, that's the case, but then, there's bad writers. So look at some of the shit that's been out on,
As someone who works in copywriting and has had utilized his fair share of AI tools, you can very much tell what has been written by an AI or not. It's it's very plain in front of my face. Some clients, they can sometimes just accept it, but but in terms of all of this stuff that you mentioned, obviously more bad news for CM Punk.
Yeah, Punk's out of a job. I mean, that sucks.
But now, like, the speculation has ramped up about the Survivor Series in Chicago, so we'll wait and see on that front. But I think that, yeah, I never checked out Heel, so I don't know if it was any good or not, and it won't really affect me one way or the other if they're cancelled or if somebody else decides to pick them back up later on. But yeah, The Rock and Cena. I think Cena's thing was always going to be short term anyway, so I don't think that's going to realistically change. I don't think he's going to be around much beyond, like, up till Crown Jewel, and then that's probably going to be it, really. I could see him putting LA Knight over on that show.
Yeah, still leaning in that direction of Cena's going to come out on, I guess tomorrow or something, and then it's going to change from the handicap match to LA Knight.
Well,
yeah, that was
by all reports, that was going to happen if LA Knight didn't have COVID or whatever.
Yeah.
As long as he's healthy, then yeah, I think they'll do it. If not, they might just keep him off until the show, and then oh my god, LA Knight's here.
That's kind of a little bit of what I'm anticipating, is that they might just turn into the skid and be like, no, it's a handicap match, and then he gets beaten down, and what's he going to do when it comes to the pay-per-view? And then maybe next Friday they do the LA Knight thing, or, I don't know.
But I just realistically see them winning that tag team match in whatever configuration, and then that leading into a match between those two at Crown Jewel, and then that'll be it for Cena at that point, at least until potentially WrestleMania season. The Rock, I mean, again, it's one of those things where, like, I won't believe The Rock is involved in anything until I see it. Like, I can definitely see the possibility, just based on it's always down to if he's interested or not, and what other obligations he has. So I'm kind of past the point now. I'm not even going to speculate about that until I see it one way or the other.
I do think that there is more of a chance now, if everybody's going back to work, and then they're going to try to rush, like, you got to come back to work now, you got to redo these projects and stuff. I do think that there's more of a chance now that he might end up bailing out of WrestleMania. So I'm kind of, I don't know. I feel like I'm not going to be able to have any peace for WrestleMania until after night 2 is done.
Well, your problem is you're going full nihilist on all of it. Like, you're just like,
they burned me too much.
Roman's gonna hold the title for 5 years, and
look what happened at Mania Night 2 this year.
I mean, look, they will never wash that stink off, even if Cody finishes the story at 40. But I'm not as detached about all of it. I think at some point they'll just go, hey, look, we had fun with it. We can't keep this fucking thing going. If The Rock's ever available, we'll just do the match. But something tells me he's very locked in for this, because he just keeps talking about wrestling lately.
Maybe he wants more people to be talking about wrestling and less people to be talking about Hawaii. And it's just like, well, we know the adults keep talking about that shit, so,
No, we didn't talk about this, but real quick, how much do you think the abomination of Black Adam fucked the Roman plans?
I don't think it did, pretty much at all.
Because, there was a moment where it was like, I don't know, they're not really liking me right now. Maybe we hold off.
I think, if anything, that would have given him more of a cause to pop up in wrestling, get a huge pop, and get that ego boost,
Yeah.
Rather than for it to be like, oh, Black Adam sucked, so let's not do The Rock. Because that the wrestling fans are always just going to be like, oh my God, it's Dwayne, There is crossover between that group and the group that follows comic book movies, but just the same as there's people that would check out the XFL, Let's end this with the other hot tag that I've got going on. I guess it's kind of a combo of hot tags, but more general talk about these releases that had happened last week. And so after we did the podcast, they released Matt Riddle. So we never got a chance to talk about Matt Riddle being gone from WWE and the potential of him going elsewhere, or what this means, or whether they should have done it or shouldn't have. Had he burned too many bridges? What's this just kind of WWE protecting themselves and maybe they should have stood up for him a little bit more, or did they already stand up for him way too much? How are you guys feeling about the Matt Riddle situation?
Pretty good. Yeah, you got it.
I think that I had been initially afraid of basically this thing happening years ago when all of his initial stuff came out during Speaking Out. I think that this was a case of too many strikes and just, hey, it's a perfect storm to just let this guy go. I think it sucks from a creative standpoint because there was a lot of time put into this guy. But that's neither here nor there. I think ultimately this is the best move for all parties involved. And I kind of hope that he gets his life together.
Yeah, so I think that obviously Rated RKO was not Rated RKO, fucking hell, got the wrong way around.
RK Bro.
I actually typed that out the other day in the same. I was just like, Rated RKO too.
Yeah. RK Bro was a great act while it lasted, and that was the peak of Riddle's run in WWE, was being part of that tag team, and that could have potentially launched into bigger and better things, but then Riddle had to riddle, and that was just the end of it at that point. With all he'd already had like loads of allegations and other stories surrounding him, and then just him getting injured and other elements around it as well, just really messed everything up, having to go to rehab for a time as well. It's he was in a bad situation, and it certainly didn't make any better with the recent airport issue as well. So I think that for WWE, from a PR perspective, it was the right move to get rid of him. I think that from his perspective, he wasn't doing very much, and it's an opportunity for him to move on. No, he should not go to AEW. I just
absolutely
don't think
not.
Despite him being a great wrestler and again having not reached his ceiling in WWE, I don't think that it's worth the headache of bringing him in,
especially right after this CM Punk stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Like, just stay away from it. If he gets his life back together, then sure, give him a call. But it's, I think it should be. It's not worth the headaches that are potentially surrounding it. And the issue is that I don't know where he ends up then in pro wrestling, because, like, you would say New Japan would be a good place because they don't have as much of a care about that reputation side of things, because it's in Japan. Fucking hell, they brought in Michael Elgin for a time after those allegations came out surrounding him. So I think they would see the opportunity of Riddle. The issue is Riddle likes the weed, and Japan doesn't like the weed. So I think that him bringing all manner of substances across the country into Japan might be a very, very significant issue at some point. But so yeah, I don't know where he finds his feet then. Maybe if they go with like New Japan still, and there's New Japan Strong, but that's a very limited thing now. And there's Impact, but that feels too below his level. But fundamentally, if there's no one else that will take him that is of his level,
that's where you're wrong, friend. I think Impact might be one of the only landing spots.
See, yeah, I think he's more likely to pop up in like GCW and stuff, and to try to just work some indie shows. And I mean, he had said specifically before that he was like, "Hey, my backup plan is to do porn." So maybe he wants to do that instead.
Situated to do so. I think if the most recent partner, I do believe,
okay,
is Filmster. Oh God.
RK Bang Bros.
Maybe he might just be a guy who goes that route instead.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how I feel about that, but I'm glad that it's over. I'll say that. I don't have to, because every one of these releases, for as much as people say, "Oh, we shouldn't say things," you always see the comments of, "How does Riddle keep escaping?" So I'm glad that this is over, so I don't have to read those comments, or honestly hear about Matt Riddle or see any stupid scooter spots. Or honestly, after the Rollins feud, I'm pretty good on Riddle. So I think personally, from a fandom perspective, I was good. I was kind of checked out.
I think it's such a shame that somebody who had a lot of potential to be a main eventer and a world champion ended up fucking up his career enough. Riddle me this. What happens when you fuck around? You find out.
I remember back in like 2021, so it was a while back, but like me and Tony both had Riddle as our superstar of the year for WWE, I think. So it's like to go from that and to now end up here is, it's a significant fall from grace, but basically you could see the trajectory of it happening pretty much after Randy Orton got injured. That was pretty much it for Riddle.
Yeah,
maybe we should have given it to Randy Orton instead.
Yeah, that's true. The best case scenario is that whatever it is that keeps creating these problems, because we've seen it happen with Jeff Hardy and some other people where it's just like, okay, clearly there's something that you need to get fixed. It's not just a matter of, well, that's just a bullshit thing. That's not really true. That's not really true. That's not really true. And eventually where there's smoke, there's fire. And if you've got a lot of drama around,
a lot of smoke.
Yeah, true. At a certain point, you have to just be like, all right, there's drama constantly circling him. And it's probably a good portion of it is because he's creating some of that. So the best case scenario, he fixes whatever that is, gets his shit together, cleans up his act, and then has some kind of second wind, whether it's in WWE again, or it's in AEW, or it's elsewhere. And maybe he goes back into like an MMA type thing or something. Probably no. But it is kind of one of those things that now people are like, okay, out of these releases, who gets into OnlyFans quicker? Is it going to be Matt Riddle or is it going to be Dana Brooke? It seems like that's kind of a betting thing that's happening now. But it's not even the only thing to talk about when it comes to the releases, because we also have some funny stories from Mason Mansoor, and then we've got this Rick Boogs thing. I think we should probably end on Rick Boogs because I think that's even more funny and interesting. I should say the Mason Mansoor stuff is pretty much just like, hey, here are some funny things that we couldn't talk about before, but now we could talk about it. And I think that the little bits that I've seen of them talking about it are both usually pretty funny and actually pretty insightful. Like the thing that Mansoor had said that he had heat originally because when he was booked to win at, was it Super Showdown or was it Crown Jewel, where they had the biggest battle royal that he won, and that he just didn't think about the idea of like shaking everybody's hand and introducing himself. So everybody was like, oh, fuck this guy. Fuck this NXT dude. It's, it's interesting to hear those stories because you go, yeah, some of that stuff still hasn't changed. And he must have worked his way back into being like, oh, I fucked up. I'm sorry, everybody. And then, people become friends and all. I thought that the Braun Strowman sandwich story was really funny. And that was just like this. If anybody doesn't know, the whole story was basically essentially Mason Mansoor, we're going to have this whole model pose down thing. Braun Strowman was going to barrel through them, pick up a lunchbox that Mace had, and eat a sandwich out of it. And he ended up
barrel through them.
He barreled through them too quick.
Yeah.
And they did they were going to turn around and then get themselves, situated, but he ended up just bursting through them when they were not turned around yet. So Mace accidentally threw the lunchbox into the crowd, and then he was scrambling for it, and then the person tried to throw it back, and he's like, no, if you throw it back, then they're going to think that I had it the whole time, and then they're going to fire me because they were like, oh, I went into business for myself for this fucking sandwich. And it's just like little stories like that are things that I wish we could hear about on a weekly basis, to just tell us these little things that
I think they're going to deliver.
I mean, just in general, pro wrestling, like I want to know about, the little mistakes that happened on Raw from a Rollins or whatever. There should be more transparency for that stuff. But I do think that they should tell more of these stories because they're really fun.
I don't think they should tell more of these stories for personal reasons. I don't
just want to get a story out of each one of them. Yeah,
But they're
and I don't blame
stories. I will say this. I enjoyed being able to finish the article that I wrote on that particular story with Mansoor saying, there's the worst dirt sheet story of all time. So I like them. They kind of get it. They're funny guys. And I thought it was hysterical that they were like, Hunter really wants this sandwich spot. Because if I told you that Braun Strowman was supposed to eat a sandwich, you would think, my God, Vince is just like so intent on big guy eats sandwich. And it was a Hunter call completely. So that's fun to hear. They're good dudes. I think they're gonna land perfectly fine on their feet and do a lot of fun indie stuff. As far as the Rick Boog stuff, you can fill me in because I've been trying to avoid it.
Well, do you have anything about the Mason Mansour stuff before we move on to Boogs, Callum?
I have to confess I haven't really looked too much into it, or I haven't really read too much about any of the stories they talked about. It seems like I'd say just based on what they have been coming up with, and like immediately being quite vocal about this stuff and just having fun with it means that they will do. Like it's a great balance of both building up their stock as like some pretty cool guys that have like a good sense of humor and a good vision of things that other promoters would likely take advantage of without doing anything which would blacklist them from WWE in any regard. So I think they've towed the line well from what I have seen of it. But yeah, as Rob says, those two will find work very, very easily.
I also like that they called Sean Ross Sapp in their first live stream just immediately, just like to fuck around. They're calling Sean Ross Sapp on the phone. They're just funny guys.
So the Boogs thing. Rye Boogs, as people are calling him online, because he is becoming more of a self-meme in a lot of ways. And I'd be interested to see like what's the truth behind here and what Ed's just kind of blown out of proportion and all. But he has said in these past couple days since we talked about his release and all, somebody had said, this never would have happened, or this is a comment that was on YouTube videos of his, I think. This never would have happened with Vince at the helm. Very obvious that WWE has been reinventing their image to please networks / advertisers. They're removing what they deem toxic masculinity, which is another whole discussion of like...
Is that what he responded to?
That's what he responded to for this. And
oh, that's fun. If I would have even known that was what he responded to, I'd tell you right now, you're so full of shit.
Well, his response to it is, I can say with 100% certainty, the removal of Vince killed my career. So that already kind of implies that he agrees with what that person's saying. Now, I don't agree. I don't think that any of us do agree that this is some attack on toxic masculinity and blah, 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 whatever it might be.
Whoa. What's the problem about attacking toxic masculinity?
Oh, did I phrase it like that? I mean,
sucks.
No, I mean, I don't think that this is like hey, we need to make a statement, a political statement, and we're going to get rid of Rick Boogs because he's too masculine. That's what I mean. But it kind of implies that he would agree with that. But he goes even further to say in another part where, he was talking about how much that they really did like him and that they used him for all sorts of different things. And he said, pretty much everyone in the corporate side of the company agreed about him being like, this big guy with a lot of personality and all that stuff, which is why I was always the third party guy doing commercials for Old Spice, Snickers, Mike's Hard Lemonade, Toyota. However, one person clearly has some weird grudge against me. So that immediately got people going all over the place because everybody's like, all right, shit, now you're specifically saying one person has a grudge. And you kind of have to assume if it's this, hey, when Vince was taken out, that killed my career and one person has a grudge against me. It's like, all right, well, who are you targeting other than Triple H? Because it wouldn't be really weird to be like, well, when Vince was gone, one person's got a grudge against me and it's Kevin Dunn. No, that's, Kevin Dunn's pretty much been on the Vince side of things. Bruce Pritchard's pretty much been on the Vince side of things. I don't think it would be Nick Khan, but it could be. Stephanie's not in control anymore, so it wouldn't be her call to release him.
I mean, you would speculate that it's the guy that's running the creative outside of Vince. like, 'cause that's the guy that can really have any influence over Rick Boogs' career trajectory and his push. Is the guy that's not writing the show, but in charge of directing the show, pretty much. So yeah, I think it's fair to speculate that it would be Triple H doing it, because fundamentally, when Triple H was in NXT, Boogs wasn't really used on that much at all anyway. Like, he had like 2 or 3 segments with the air guitar thing, got over, and then was taken off TV. So,
and when he came back after his whole, because people got to remember when Boogs was teaming with Nakamura and all, Vince was firmly in charge. And then he gets injured. He's gone for a year plus or something. And then when he comes back, he didn't really do anything. They had him wrestle some matches here and there. Like, they weren't completely ignoring him. But even something as simple as, like, they started teaming him up with Elias, and then they promptly separated the two of them. They never really had them become a full team. And then both of them, when they got separated, disappeared. Like, we haven't seen Boogs in, I don't even remember the last match that he had. It was probably some Battle Royal or something. So if Triple H was somebody who was like, yeah, I really care about this guy, I really want to use him, and he's somebody that I am building towards the future, we would have seen him on TV. Just the same as Io Sky gets the fucking championship, and Tommaso Ciampa is out there, and, you know, Bronson Reed is, you know, getting all these wins, and kind of seems like that's the Triple H thing, which then makes it go like, okay, Triple H, quote unquote, had a weird grudge against him. Huh.
It's the phrasing of that, isn't it?
It's the old school wrestler, and brother, Vince just didn't want to put me over, you know, like,
yeah.
Just, okay, cool. Like I said, with the Jade Cargill lying stuff, wrestling is alive and well. That's what's happening here. It's just a lot of, go ahead, Calvin.
It's the term, isn't it? Of like, it's the term, the grudge aspect of it, because it's basically saying it was a personal thing between us, rather than the fact they just didn't think that I was very good, or that they, you know,
they differed on creative ideas or something.
Yeah, or like creative had nothing for me or anything like that. He's taking it as like, yeah, this guy, whoever it is, we all speculate Triple H, but whoever it was, basically took a personal interest in making sure I didn't get over.
And the reality is that's probably not the case, but he took it personal because it's his livelihood.
Yeah, like, I mean, we don't know, of course. We don't know at all what goes on behind the scenes because we're not there. But, like, I highly doubt that there's, like, yeah, Triple H is sitting there around the conference table. They're all talking about what they want to do for Monday Night Raw, getting notes from Vince at the last minute to change it all anyway. And, like, Triple H is sitting there going, yeah, I think that we should really try to push this this tag team match with, you know, Dom is whatever like that. But can we also put a thing on the show that says Rick Boogs sucks? And then everybody goes, no, I don't know. Then he goes, damn, I'll pitch it next week. You know what I mean? Like, I doubt that that's the case. Because if that was some kind of bitter personal issue, they probably would have just released him before anyway. It's more than likely that he was like, yeah, I don't really see too much value in pushing him. So we'll keep him around until we decided we don't want to keep him anymore. And then it's hard not to take it personally because, yeah, he lost his job. So if he was pushed under Vince and then Vince loses that kind of creative control, then Triple H is taking charge, and then Triple H maybe not necessarily wasn't digging his ideas, you can take that as like, well, he doesn't like me. Because, you know, that's going to be the case in any kind of job that you can be like, I guess that my boss doesn't like me or something. But the weird grudge thing is like, that's not helping you out though, you know? That's not going to win you, you know, signing again back in WWE in a year.
I mean, just from that interaction, again, it might be like taking one statement or a couple of comments he's made and going too far. And yeah, so yeah, I don't know the guy, so I can't really argue that. But just from like an outsider's perspective, he strikes me as a guy that has a pretty big ego and thinks that, like, essentially he's got the mindset of like if Vince was around, I would be still there and I would be pushed properly, because he thinks that he has the perfect look for, you know, WWE. He's like a big guy. He had a gimmick that was like very kid friendly and all that other stuff, because it was just like him playing guitar. And so I think that he thinks that he's kind of an archetype for what like a pro wrestler could and maybe should be. So hopefully, well, as for his sake, obviously I don't care one way or the other, but hopefully for his sake, that doesn't lead him to turn down opportunities because he thinks that he's worth more than that, which is very much where the Ryboogs thing come in, because essentially Ryback left and then thought that he was bigger than any independent willing to sign him pretty much, and so he hasn't wrestled since. Pretty much.
Well, let me tell you about this company called the National Wrestling Alliance.
He is definitely somebody we talked before about, like, Boogs could fit in NWA.
Listen, I said that before I knew that he was like, oh, they're taking away, they're taking a stand against toxic masculinity. First of all, yes, they toxic masculinity is shitty. Kind of get over it. You know what I mean? Like, boo-hoo.
That's built, that's like baked into the term is that it's, you know, like that's the whole point.
Yeah, like
that's like saying like, oh man, you're taking a stance against domestic abuse, and it's like, yeah, it's abuse. You know what I mean? Fuck, there's no debate about that. Come on.
Like, why would he want to associate himself with that? And I don't get it. I hope this isn't a Ryback situation, because there was a time where I really wanted to see Ryback succeed, and now it's just like, please go away. You know? Boogs really strikes me as, hey man, you were on TV as Joseph Average. You were doing great, pal. Like, relax. You got injured. Things didn't go your way. It happens sometimes. You can work your way back. Why are you taking everything so personal?
And sabotaging things, because definitely people have, I mean, look at what happened with that big group of people that got released before, where it was like a Bronson Reed type, where, you know, if you don't burn those bridges, you can be brought back. All you got to do is make a name for yourself, and then, you know, prove that you've got more than what they saw. And then they go, yeah, you know what? Actually, we're going to have Cody Rhodes come back, and he's going to be, you know, we're going to even not change your theme song or anything, because there you go. They roll out the red carpet for Jade Cargill because they're like, yeah, Jade Cargill is somebody we really want to invest in. It's interesting that he did go into this, and some people are like, oh, maybe he's just joking and he's, you know, being, playing the marks and whatever. But it's like, but if that's the case, you're not doing it in a way that comes off that way, because I'm sure plenty of people are just like, this is some bullshit that he's saying. You hear what Boogs is talking about? And then that just becomes, you know, sarcasm is something you have to play to the right crowd and in the right way. I don't personally get the vibe that it is being sarcastic. I think that this is pretty much like, yeah, once Vince was taken out, man, my career was screwed. And
I think there's a lot of people who felt the opposite, where once Hunter got taken out, their career was screwed. You know?
Yeah. I mean, we've seen some of those people. So whether that has any change in a positive or negative direction for his career remains to be seen, but I don't think it'll end up being a positive thing coming out of this. Dutch Mantel called him the cure for insomnia out of like his response to all this. So we know at least Dutch isn't a fan, but
that's gonna bode well for his future.
I don't think that there was anything else to talk about here. We talked about quite a bit. We did our combo edition. Anything else that I'm forgetting about?
I don't think so.
Yeah, nothing if we don't. Yeah, nothing if we don't want to dive into any TV stuff. But yeah, to be fair, there was nothing really much to talk about.
Yeah, I think we covered TV stuff pretty well. Okay, they announced Shinsuke and Seth Rollins for Last Man Standing. We'll talk more about that next week.
I mean, yeah, it's we got our Fastlane stuff to talk about and Pay-Per-Viewpoint stuff coming next week. Predictions wise, Pay-Per-Viewpoint post shows coming up on Saturday and Sunday for No Mercy and for WrestleDream, which we just of course broke down. And we will talk about if there is anything on the TV side that we're forgetting about. I mean, off the top of my head, I think we pretty much talked about all the Dynamite stuff that we could have lumped into WrestleDream. The NXT stuff is pretty much like, all right, well, we talked about that with the No Mercy stuff. Yeah. If there is something we're forgetting, though, drop it in the comments. Let us know. We'll respond in that fashion. And make sure that you're letting us know what you think about our predictions and all of our rundown of the hot tags and such. Make sure you are following fanboysanonymous.com. Mentioned that before. Maybe we could get into more topics on the whole SAG stuff and the WGA stuff and the fact that the video game industry is going to be hit with this next. So that's interesting. And go to the link tree at amangotree.com. Like and follow all those different things you see there, including my Facebook and Twitter at Tony Mango, and follow Robin Callum.
Yep, follow me everywhere at Dude Felice. Check me out on Fightful. Check me out on WrestleZone. If you want to hear more of what I had to say about NXT No Mercy, I was on the predictions show for True Heel Heat. So if you checked out what I did here and want to hear me even more talk about NXT No Mercy, check that out as well. I do come up with a great idea for NXT Halloween Havoc. And yeah, I always appreciate all the support. Callum?
You can find me on Twitter at Wigmeister14. Check out the Power Rankings every Saturday on smarkmo.com, where I'm ranking the WWE superstars based on their previous week's performance. And then while you're there, or if you want to head over to WWEFantasyLeague.com directly, you'll be able to find our Fantasy League table, see how all of our teams and all of our selected roster members are performing as we head towards Fastlane, where the next switch-up will occur on the never-ending journey towards WrestleMania 40.
The never-ending journey.
It feels like that sometimes.
We should start breaking out into song for Never-Ending Story. All right, everybody. Hot tags done. WrestleDream done. We will be coming up next with the NXT No Mercy Pay-Per-Viewpoint post-show Saturday night. Hopefully you will join us for that in the live chat, and we will see you then. This has been another Smark Out moment, and we are being counted out.